Yep. Thanks, Scott. So happy to be here. I'm Virgil Zetterlind, co-founder and chief technologist at conserve.io. And we've been built and maintaining the Whaler app and sort of citizen science app family since 2012. To start by acknowledging the partners who make this all possible, principally IFAW is our primary funder, and then the National Marine Sanctuary System, giving us a lot of the sort of technical input and requirements. And along the way, we've gotten a big list of data partners, government partners, and others. So really part of a big network now. So, you know, if you really aren't super familiar with Whaler, it's a globally available Android and iPhone application that's free to end users. It has both sort of an outreach component and a citizen science component. So it shows all the active whale protection areas, recent whale observations, allows people to submit sightings, has regional specializations for the US, Eastern Canada, and we're working now with Scott and others in the Pacific Northwest, particularly to sort of ratchet up the level of detail and specificity in your area. And we also have some more sort of what we call special projects that aren't open to the public. So National Park Service in Alaska, for example, uses Whaler for their cruise ship and ferry ship strike reduction.
Maybe it's over here somewhere.
Is everybody able to hear okay?
See, it's actually like this woke up and that's your HDMI. It's still on.
It's HDMI, yeah.
Do you need me to pause, Scott?
This
Okay. Well, I can type.
maybe this needs to.
Figure it out.
That definitely didn't help.
I need you. Oh.
Did you see something? Okay. Okay, so this is definitely HDMI.
Yep, HDMI. I can pull it out and put it back in again. Is it something?
That's a good idea.
Are we good to go, Scott? Are we okay? Just give me a thumbs up, I guess, when you're good to go in the presentation room. All right, great. So, again, Whaler originally in its first form was really about awareness. So region and specific approach guidelines, static and dynamic whale measures. In version 2 is where we really went to the human sightings. This is originally was just from Whaler app users, but part of the reason I'm here, and we'll talk in more detail in a few minutes, is we started with human sightings, and we started adding in acoustic networks, also effort-based surveys from more organized efforts. And with COVID, we also added trusted observer networks, so shortening sort of the timeline and having a new category of sightings from well-trusted observers. Whale alert also includes basic marine protected areas and marine sanctuaries for the US and Canada, as well as real-time weather from the NOAA ports system. So in terms of the human sighting within the app, it supports both live and sort of distressed whale reporting, automatically captures user location and time, which was a big plus over phone calls. The species list is location specific, so also sort of lets the user hopefully pick from a curated list of species most likely to be near the user. Because this was always intended to be a boater application, it doesn't actually require a network application. You don't need an active network connection to make sightings. If you are disconnected, they'll stay on the device till you reconnect and they'll automatically sync with our cloud. We really, from the beginning, this has, again, been designing close consultation with NOAA and other partners who are managing the different threatened species. So sightings, don't just go into a database, they go out in real-time alerts to resource managers. Managers can subscribe based on their location and species of interest. And again, in the last few years, coordinating with the various agencies, we've been putting these sightings back into whale alert to make users more aware that the whales really are out there. It's really important feedback loop to sort of get sightings from the public. You have to show sightings in the app. If you haven't used whale alert, it's really simple. You hit the binocular make a sighting button. You choose whether this is a live or distressed whale. If it's a live whale, you go to a simple form. When you try and pick a species, you get a sort of a helper guide if you're not sure on the key characteristics of the species in your local area. If you report a distressed whale, it's going to look at your location and decide what the appropriate response network is. Once it's collected your digital report, it's going to prompt you to actually phone call in real time and show your latitude, longitude so that you can report and hopefully get action quickly. This is just some screenshots of whale sightings in the app in the Puget Sound area. Some of the other supplemental information, like information on the Olympic Coast Sanctuary and one of the NOAA ports weather stations. Here was, I think, last year, a 30-day window of sightings. As you can see, one limitation of citizen science apps is in terms of human sightings, you're only seeing whales where humans and whales are together. So do want to sort of emphasize that there are definitely biases in the sample data because most of it comes from humans. We're very collaborative. So in terms of sighting sourcing, of course, we pull from our own users. We're connected to multiple effort-based survey programs. A year ago, we got permission to tap the NOAA right whale database in real time so that we can bring in sightings from aerial survey, government efforts, university efforts reporting through NOAA. We are connected to the Woods Hole Slocum glider and buoy network, which again, I'm going to give a little more detail on in a minute. Also been working with Orca Network and Orca Sound in the Pacific Northwest, both on getting network sightings into whale alert sort of manually, but also increasingly automatically, especially through acoustics. Once these sightings come in, they go out to the various NOAA fishery science centers and research partners, other state and federal managers, working with the Acacia Cooperative, also the Whale Safe program out of UCSB in Southern California. Whale alert is a primary leg of their human reporting tool. So, in terms of acoustics, I thought it'd be maybe the best thing to do is sort of like, how do we get acoustic sightings? Because these are obviously coming from partners. So One method is what I call scheduled poll. This is basically where our server knows to ask for data from someone else's server on some set schedule based on the update rate of that resource. And, for example, the Slocum gliders out of Woods Hole, they have their own server architecture that creates Excel files of all things. But we actually basically can, once an hour, pull their list of active sensors, parse that out for each sensor, download their recent sightings detections file. It's tricky because their detection file, I think, is 30 days long, but obviously we just looked at it an hour ago. So we have to do some of our own logic to not create duplicates. Other issue you have with buoys and gliders, they, in the case of buoys, they don't move. In the case of gliders, they move really slow, usually fractional knots. So if you've got a really vocal whale, they might have 100 detections of that whale in a very short, over the last hour, and you don't really need to put 100 icons on the map in your application to tell people a whale was there. So we do some of our own logic to sort of set appropriate distance and time rates before we post new detections. Those detections also aren't they're acoustic from whale vocalization. So again, they don't really do ID. So they're not like a tag system where you might be able to ID individuals. Another example is the Cornell listening network for right whales, the Boston ship channel. Again, they have a server that we can ask. I think on this one, we ask on a 15-minute basis for an update. We get a list of the active buoys and then the most recent sighting time or detection time for any right whales. Better, where it's feasible, is what we call an asynchronous push. This is where your acoustic system tells our server that there's a new sighting basically as it's processed or as it happens. This really reduces the latency, makes it less likely that we mess up any sort of logic and parsing or through duplicates. We just need a message that basically gives the latitude, longitude, timestamp, and species if that's part of the detection. So a couple examples here, the Argos spot tags. Their system was set up really to send humans emails when those tags ping. We set up a server and basically an email on our server that the computer listens to. And so if they put a spot tag on an animal, they subscribe our email address, our server email address to it. When it comes in, we can basically parse all the necessary information out of the text of the email. Where there's a little more coding capacity, for example, with Atlantic White Shark Conservancy in Massachusetts and their Sharktivity app, they've deployed a number of real-time buoys that do acoustic tag detection. They send basically a structured message to our server that gives us everything we need to know. It's much less subject to error than email, or because it's a lot harder to misformat the messages. And then finally, a lot of acoustics are still done offline, whether it's a week, a month, a year. You deploy hydrophones, you go out, pull data cards, do data processing. Typically, you get a spreadsheet out of that at the end of detections. And so again, we've got a few contributors who do these sort of periodic or are using these offline buoys, but they still want the data accessible through our common database. So we set up custom scripts where they send us the data files when they have new ones, and we can process them in. Just to start talking again specifically about the Pacific Northwest, we're really active in the area a lot thanks to Scott's networking and helping introduce us to all the relevant organizations. We're very interested in extending our ability to add Orca Sound and other acoustic networks to the sightings maps. We are, in discussions with many others with the whale report alert system and how to appropriately share sightings so that they do benefit the large ships and the collision avoidance. But we're also doing a lot of focus on recreational boaters ourselves. And so one pilot project we have that'll be coming out later this fall is creating essentially boater alert zones in whale alert based on recent sightings of orcas and other large whales in the Salish Sea, driven by Orca Sound and Orca Network sightings and detections. That campaign also, includes outreach. That's another, critical thing. It's one thing to have the technology, but you really do need the outreach to engage the stakeholders. We're, looking at, we're actively trying to expand sort of the funding we have, be able to come and do dock walks, to work with local organizations on outreach materials and meetings, both in person and virtual, and doing things technically in the app that make it more appealing to voters. So putting in more weather, other information, so that they're more likely to sort of have and keep the app, so that when they do sight whales, it's already on their phone. For this audience, there's been, we do have another app called Spotter Pro, which supports custom effort-based survey. It's been the primary tool for the Channel Islands Naturalist Corps and others for many years. So if you are looking to move your effort-based surveys to a digital platform, I just say, Spotter Pro runs on any Apple mobile device and is, a pretty low-cost solution to get out of the paper form business. So with that, again, thanks, Scott, for the time today, and glad to take any questions.